Welcome to my observatory. That's right, I spent the last few months building my very own observatory, and in this video I'll take you along with me as I capture my first photograph from it. This is a Skyshed pod, which is a brand of personal observatories, and recently when one came up for sale in my area, it really was the perfect opportunity. So I rented a U-Haul, went down and picked it up, and I've spent most of the winter getting this set up and ready to go. It was actually pretty easy to install, and that's because this whole observatory breaks down into just 7 pieces. There are 6 wall panels, including 4 bays for storage, and the roof, or the dome. The dome opens up halfway, meaning half the sky is visible at any given time. And once it's open, the dome can be rolled around real easily by hand. This really will be a game changer for my astrophotography for 2 different reasons. The first is that there's less light pollution here. I'm close to home, but a little bit further away from the city. And every little bit helps when you're talking about darker skies. It's a noticeable improvement from what I have back at home in the backyard. The other reason, and really the most important one, is how clear the horizons are here. There's virtually no obstructions in any direction, especially to the south. That's where I have the tallest trees in my backyard at home, blocking off more than half of the sky. It's also where the Milky Way rises in the summertime, and the Orion constellation in the winter. A lot of the most interesting night sky objects are to the south, and I've never been able to photograph them before, including the nebula I'm going to try and capture tonight. So having this observatory here has unlocked the southern sky for me, and made available a whole new world of targets to photograph. After putting the structure up, there was still a little bit more work to do to get this ready for astrophotography. I laid some gravel down on the ground to cover up the grass and the mud, and I've built a pier here in the middle of the observatory. Space is limited in an observatory, and so you really don't want a tripod on the ground that you could bump into during the night. So a pier really is a must-have. This is simply 3 cinder blocks stacked on top of each other and laid into the ground with some concrete and rebar. And this pier is super solid, much stronger than the tripod that I have. Tonight I'm going to try and photograph the Seagull Nebula, an emission nebula down and to the left from the Orion constellation. It stays pretty low in the southern sky, and never rises above the trees from my backyard. So it's a perfect first target for my observatory. This nebula is really big, and it appears many times wider than the full moon in the sky. So a wide field telescope is perfect to capture it. If you've seen any of my other videos, the telescope I'll be using to capture this tonight might look familiar. On top is the William Optics RedCat 51, my wide field refractor telescope. With 250 millimeters of focal length, it's really the perfect telescope to go after this nebula. I'll be using my tried and true astronomy camera, the ZWO 533 MC Pro, and it's all on top of the Skywatcher Star Adventurer GTI mount. It's been a brutal winter for astrophotography, and this is actually the first photograph I've taken in 2026 so far. That's because we've had a combination of cloudy skies, sub-zero temperatures, and many weeks with half a foot or more of snow on the ground. We finally have some good weather this weekend, and I couldn't be more excited to kick off my astrophotography in 2026 by taking my first photograph from this new observatory. It should be a perfectly clear night tonight, so all I have to do is wait for it to get dark. Once night falls, I roll the dome around and open it up to the southern sky. After powering everything up and turning it on, it's time to point the telescope at the Seagull Nebula. Right there is the famous Orion constellation. We're pointed just down and to the left of it, at a nebula that's more than 3,000 light-years away. Capturing nebulas like this one requires long exposure times, so I take my first 3-minute-long photo. Here we go. First light from the new observatory. Oh wow, look at that. Even with just this single unprocessed shot, we can already start to see the red glow of this nebula, and the bird-like shape that gives it its name. Astrophotography is all about collecting as much light as possible, so to reveal even finer details, it's time to let the telescope run all night to capture as many photos as I can. Well, that puts a wrap on a successful first night of imaging from the observatory. All of my equipment, from the telescope to the camera to the mount, worked perfectly and everything went off without a hitch. In total, I got 3.5 hours of exposure time on the Seagull Nebula. After putting it all together, here's the final picture. We're looking at a giant, beautiful region of star formation. The darker, dusty areas are where those new stars are being created. The entire nebula is glowing red and pink. These are clouds of hydrogen gas being energized by hot, newly formed stars in the area. When we zoom in and take a closer look, we can see that there are all sorts of different formations of gas and dust clouds. It's being shaped by stellar wind, which is all the material being ejected from these stars. Over time, it's created this long shape that really does resemble a bird in flight, giving it the name the Seagull Nebula. And what's crazy to think about is that this picture takes up a huge portion of the night sky. It actually appears roughly 7 times wider than the full moon. Yet if you went outside and looked at it, you see some of these stars, but you wouldn't see the nebula at all. That's because it's just too dim, too faint for our eyes to see. That's really the power of astrophotography in long exposure times, to reveal what would otherwise be hidden objects. And our night sky is full of them. I've been a space enthusiast for as long as I can remember. I got my first telescope way back in elementary school. I've had so much fun getting into astrophotography over these last 5 or 6 years, and now having my very own observatory in many ways really does feel like a childhood dream come true. This is just the beginning, the first of many photos and adventures from the observatory, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of challenges ahead too. So if you want to see what comes next, consider subscribing, because I have some big plans ahead for this observatory. The future of my astrophotography really does feel bright. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.